All right. Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at something that I think a lot of growing organizations are really grappling with, and that is how to effectively manage their physical spaces.
Absolutely.
So we've got some really interesting materials here to kind of guide our exploration. We've got an admin course on something called Computer-Aided Facilities Management, CAFM for short.
Right, you're right.
We've got some overviews of how to get the reports you need out of these systems. We've even got training documents for integrating those detailed CAD drawings that facilities managers love to use.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of all that, any organization that's trying to handle this complex, ever-evolving puzzle of space management.
For sure.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
Where do we even begin with something like this? I mean, a CAFM system is designed to be that central hub for all your building-related data.
Right, exactly. Think of it like this. You've got all these different documents, plans, spreadsheets all over the place. CAFM brings all of that together into a single platform.
Yeah, organization is key.
It is. And then from that centralized platform, you can actually start generating some reports to make sense of all that data, to actually get some insights and then make decisions based on that.
And that makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, if you don't have the data in one place and you can't analyze it, then you're kind of just flying blind.
Totally. You're just guessing.
So let's say we're trying to really get a handle on a specific building, right? Like our materials actually give us a concrete example here.
Yeah.
They talk about this Commons building located at, get this, 3333 University Way, Prince George, BC.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Now, according to the information we have, it's over 64,000 square feet on the outside
Wow.
and about 62,000 square feet on the inside, spread across 3 floors.
Okay, so it's a real tangible example.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good-sized building.
Yeah.
It's not tiny. It's not huge. It's something we can really wrap our heads around.
Yeah.
So how do you go from just looking at the basic details of this building in the system to actually generating useful reports?
Okay, so if you're on like a building summary page in the CAFM system, you're usually going to find a reporting section or an icon. Sometimes it's a little printer icon.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of your gateway to the reporting functions.
So you just click that and off you go.
Yeah, pretty much. But there's one key thing to understand here. These systems often offer a bunch of different types of reports to choose from, and they're designed to meet different needs, right?
Oh, okay. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all reporting situation.
No, not at all. There's a lot of flexibility there.
So what are the main types of reports that we're going to see?
So there's what are often called formatted reports. These are designed to be like visually appealing and easy to understand, even for people who aren't, super deep in the data.
Right. So these are for sharing with stakeholders, getting a quick overview.
Exactly. They're usually output as PDF files, and they can include all sorts of visuals, like think charts, graphs, sometimes even those floor plans we were talking about. So you could have a floor plan that's color-coded to show different types of spaces or occupancy levels.
Exactly. And the materials we have actually show an example of a report called the Space Summary for this Commons building.
Okay, yeah, so that would probably show like how much space is allocated to different departments or functions.
Right, and maybe things like how much of that space is actually being used effectively.
Interesting.
So those formatted reports are great for getting the big picture.
Got it.
But then you've also got the tabular reports.
Okay, and those are
for when you need to really dig into the numbers. Think of them as the raw data, presented in a very straightforward way, like a spreadsheet.
so rows and columns, all that good stuff.
And you can usually view them right within the CAFM system, or even better, you can export them to an XLSX file.
Oh, very nice. So you can bring them right into Excel and start doing your analysis.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you've got your formatted reports for the big picture and then the tabular reports for the deep dive. So it depends on what you need at the moment.
And how do you actually get to see or save those reports? I mean, once you've found the one you want.
Well, usually when you click on a specific report in the list, you'll see options to either view or download. So if you hit view, you'll see the formatted report right there in your browser, all nicely laid out.
Yeah, very convenient.
Yeah. And if you need to save a copy, you just hit download.
And that'll give you a PDF for the visuals and an XLSX for the tabular data.
You got it.
Okay, cool. And what about when you're actually viewing one of those formatted reports directly in the CAFM system? I mean, what kind of controls do you usually have?
Oh, you usually have a toolbar or a set of controls right there in the viewing area. And that's going to let you do things like navigate through the pages. If it's a multi-page report, you'll have options to print it, download the PDF, for offline access.
Makes sense. You want to be able to easily share those visually appealing reports.
Exactly. And sometimes you might even be able to download the underlying data that feeds into the report.
Oh, so if you need to do some custom analysis that goes beyond what the report itself shows.
Exactly. But of course, that might depend on your permissions within the system.
Right. Not everyone gets access to the raw data.
Exactly. And another really handy feature is the zoom control.
Oh, yeah. That's essential.
Absolutely. You got to be able to zoom in to focus on specific details and zoom out to get the bigger picture.
So it's really about giving you flexibility in how you interact with the information.
That's the key.
Now, what about those tabular reports? I mean, when you're looking at that grid of data in the system, what can you do with it before you decide to export it to Excel?
Well, a lot of these CAFM systems actually have some pretty powerful tools built right into that tabular view.
Really?
Yeah. So if you hover over the column headers, you'll usually see a little icon, like 3 horizontal lines.
Okay.
And when you click that, it opens up a menu with all sorts of options. So you can add aggregate functions.
Oh, so if you want to see the total square footage of all the unoccupied spaces.
Exactly. Or maybe you want to see the average number of work orders per floor.
Interesting.
You can also group the data based on the values in a particular column.
So that would help you see patterns and trends more easily.
Exactly. Like maybe you want to group all the spaces by department and then see how much space each one is using.
Very useful.
And then perhaps the most useful option is filtering.
Oh, filtering is essential for any kind of data analysis.
It lets you really narrow down your focus and only see the rows that meet your specific criteria. So, for example, you could filter the data to only show maintenance requests that are currently overdue.
Okay, so you can get a quick snapshot of the most urgent tasks.
Exactly. So you can do quite a bit of sorting and filtering right there in the CAFM system before you even bring the data into a dedicated spreadsheet program.
These systems are designed to be really powerful tools for data analysis.
They are. They're designed to help you understand your space in ways that you just couldn't do with spreadsheets alone.
All right, so we've talked about how to navigate basic building information, how to generate these different types of reports, both formatted and tabular. Now, let's switch gears and talk about something a little more visual.
Okay, yeah.
Let's talk about those floor plans and how CAD drawings fit into all of it. So, first things first, how do you even access a floor plan within the CAFM system?
Well, usually you'll start back on that building summary page we were talking about.
Okay, right back where we began.
Yeah, and you should see a list of all the floors in the building.
So in our example, the Commons building, we'd see first floor, second floor, third floor, and so on.
Exactly. And you might see some basic info next to each floor, like its current status, the total area, maybe the number of people assigned to it, stuff like that.
Okay, so you get a quick snapshot of each floor right there.
Mm-hmm. And then to actually see the floor plan, you just click on one of those floor entries.
Right, makes sense. And what happens then?
Usually you'll see a button labeled floor plan.
Nice and simple.
Yeah. Click that and you'll be taken to the visual representation of that floor.
Okay, a nice logical flow. So once you're looking at the floor plan itself, what does that interface usually look like? I mean, how is it organized?
Well, generally, the floor plan interface is going to have a few key areas. You'll often have these flyout panels on the left and right sides of the screen, and those will have different tools and information.
Okay, so kind of like sidebars.
Yeah, exactly. And then the central area of the screen is where the actual floor plan drawing is displayed.
So they're trying to give you easy access to the tools you need while still keeping the floor plan front and center.
Exactly. That's the idea.
Now, let's talk about that left-hand panel first. I mean, what kind of tools are we typically going to find over there?
So in that left tools panel, you're going to find a lot of the core functionalities for working with the floor plan. And this is where the CAD integration comes in.
Okay, yeah, this is where those CAD drawings become really important.
Mm-hmm. So one of the crucial tools you'll usually find there is the ability to download the original DWG file of the floor plan.
Okay, and that's the standard file format for AutoCAD, right?
Exactly. So if someone needs to make detailed edits to the floor plan, they can download the DWG file, open it up in AutoCAD, and go to town.
Awesome. So you're not just stuck with a static image, you can actually work with the source file.
Exactly. And then once they've made their changes in AutoCAD, there's another really important button you'll often see in that left panel, something like Link or Publish.
Okay, and what does that do?
That's how you update the CAFM system with any changes that have been made to the floor plan in AutoCAD.
Oh, that's crucial.
It is. You want to make sure that the visual representation of the floor plan in the CAFM system is always synchronized with the most up-to-date CAD drawing.
So if someone reconfigures a space or adds new furniture, those changes are reflected in the CAFM system.
Exactly. And of course, you'll almost always have a print button in that left panel as well.
That's essential.
Yeah, so you can easily generate a hard copy or a PDF of the floor plan.
All right, so that left panel is all about managing the floor plan itself, working with the CAD drawing, making sure everything is up to date.
Right.
Now, what about that panel on the right? I mean, our sources mentioned something called a Query Legends panel. What's going on over there?
Okay. So the Query Legends panel, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
So that panel is where you're going to see the results of any active queries that are being overlaid on the floor plan.
Okay, and what do you mean by queries?
So a query is basically a way of filtering and analyzing the data in the CAFM system. You might have a query that highlights all the spaces that are currently unoccupied, or a query that shows all the spaces that are assigned to a particular department.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works.
And those queries can then be visually represented on the floor plan itself. So, for example, you might have a query that highlights spaces based on their occupancy status, and then those spaces will be color-coded on the floor plan.
So you could have like a capacity spaces in red, underutilized spaces in green, and so on.
Exactly. And then the Query Legends panel will show you a key that explains all those color codes. It'll tell you what each color represents, and it might also show you some additional information, like the total area of each category of space, or the number of spaces that fall into each category.
Oh, wow. So you're not just seeing colors on the floor plan, you're actually getting data associated with those colors.
Exactly. It's a really powerful way to visually understand how your spaces are being used.
And can you customize those queries at all? I mean, can you create your own or edit the existing ones?
Yeah, absolutely. Usually at the top of the Query Legends panel, there's an option to add new queries.
Okay, so you're not limited to just the predefined ones.
No, you can create your own queries to analyze whatever aspects of your space you're interested in.
Very cool. And what about the legends themselves? I mean, can you customize those? Like change the colors or the information that's displayed?
Yeah, you can usually do quite a bit of customization there. So for each active legend, you'll typically have controls to manage its visibility. Like you can minimize it if you need to see more of the floor plan.
Right, so you can tuck it away when you don't need it.
Exactly. You can also refresh the data to make sure you're seeing the most up-to-date information, or you can even remove the query altogether if you don't need it anymore.
Okay, good. So lots of control over what you're seeing.
Yeah. And then there's usually an edit button associated with each legend.
Okay, and what can you do in there?
That's where you can really get into the customization. You can change the colors used for different categories, adjust the ranges of values that are being displayed, and even choose to hide certain categories if they're not relevant to your current analysis.
Wow, so you can really fine-tune how the data is visualized on the floor plan.
Exactly. You have a lot of flexibility there.
All right, so let's say you've got your floor plan all set up, you've got your queries running, and you're seeing all this data overlaid on the floor plan, and now you want to get a printout of this whole thing. How does that work? I mean, what's the printing process like from this interface?
Okay, so to print the floor plan, you would usually go back to that left tools panel we were talking about and click the print button.
All right, easy enough.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
That'll usually open up a print dialog window, and you'll have a bunch of options to customize your printout.
Okay, walk me through some of the key options.
All right, so one of the first things you'll usually see is a drop down to select the output type. So PDF is usually the default, which is great for sharing and general printing.
Makes sense.
But you might also have options to export as an image file, like PNG, or even as a DWG file.
Okay, so you can actually get a DWG file that includes the data overlays.
Exactly. So you could send that DWG file to someone who's using CAD software, and they would be able to see all the color coding and the labels that are based on your queries.
That's super useful for collaboration and sharing insights.
It is.
Now, what about customizing the layout of the printout?
Oh, you can usually do quite a bit of that as well. So there might be a section called Include Components, where you can choose whether to print just the floor plan itself, just the legends, or both.
Okay, so you have control over what elements are included.
Yep. And then there's usually a template section.
Okay, and what's that for?
So in the template section, you can choose from different predefined layouts that control where the legend appears on the page relative to the floor plan.
Oh, so you could have the legend at the top right, bottom left, and so on.
Exactly. And you can usually also customize the title that appears on the printout.
Okay, so you can give it a more descriptive title than just the default building and floor name.
Right. You might want to make it clear that this printout is showing, like, space utilization by department or something like that.
Got it.
And then there's the paper section where you choose your paper size and orientation.
Standard stuff.
Yeah, but you can often choose from a variety of sizes, including large architectural formats. And you can choose between landscape and portrait orientation to best fit your floor plan.
Okay, good. So you've got control over the basic layout and formatting of the printout. Are there any more advanced options?
Oh yeah, there are usually some more advanced controls available as well.
Like what?
So there's often a view section that lets you specify exactly what portion of the floor plan you want to print.
Okay, that makes sense. You might not always want to print the entire floor.
Exactly. So you might have an option to print the full drawing or just the current view, which is what you're seeing on your screen at that moment. And sometimes you might even have a custom option that lets you define a specific area to print by drawing a rectangle on the floor plan.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility.
And what about the legend? Are there any special controls for that?
Yeah, you might find a legend section where you can do things like float the legend so it can overlap the drawing if you need to save space.
Okay, interesting.
And you might also have options to adjust the width and the scale of the legend.
All right, that can be useful when you're printing to different paper sizes.
Exactly. And then sometimes there's even a button that says more or something like that, and that'll reveal even more advanced settings.
Okay, and what kind of things are hiding behind that more button?
Well, that's where you might find options to suppress certain layers in the CAD drawing for the printed output. So, for example, you might have a section called Suppress Polyline Layers.
And what would that let you do?
Well, that would let you hide the boundary lines for individual spaces, suites, or even the entire floor.
Oh, that could be useful if those lines are visually distracting or not really relevant to the information you're trying to highlight on the printout.
Exactly. And then there's usually a similar option to suppress non-query text layers.
And what does that do?
So that lets you hide the original hard-coded labels that were part of the CAD drawing.
Okay, so if your queries are adding new labels to the floor plan, you can hide the old ones so they don't overlap and make things confusing.
Exactly. You want to make sure your printout is as clear and focused as possible.
That makes perfect sense. So once you've gone through all those settings and customized your printout exactly the way you want it,
Right.
What's the final step?
You just hit the print button, and the system will generate your PDF, PNG, or DWG file, depending on what you chose as your output type.
And then you can either download it or send it to a printer.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about how to navigate basic building information, generate various types of reports, both formatted and tabular, and we've even gone into quite a bit of detail on how to work with those floor plans and how the CAD integration plays such a crucial role. But now I want to talk about something that's really important for any system that manages sensitive data and functionalities.
Okay, what's that?
I want to talk about user roles and security.
Ah, yes. Super important.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're dealing with all this detailed information about an organization's physical assets, you need to make sure that only the right people have access to the right information.
Right. You don't want just anyone being able to see everything,
Exactly.
change anything.
Right. So that's where the concept of role-based access control comes into play.
Okay. And what's that all about?
So instead of trying to manage permissions for each individual user, the CAFM system lets administrators define different roles.
Okay.
And each role has a specific set of permissions that dictate what data and functionalities users assigned to that role can access and interact with.
Oh, okay. So it's a way of grouping users together based on their responsibilities and then controlling their access accordingly.
Exactly. And that makes it much easier to manage security because you're not dealing with individuals. You're dealing with these predefined roles.
Right. Makes sense.
Now, what are some of the general levels of access or role capabilities that our materials talk about?
Okay, so our materials mention a few common ones. You might have a casual user role, which is usually very limited, like maybe read-only access to a small subset of information.
Okay, so that might be for someone who just needs to occasionally look up some basic information.
Right. Then you might have a read-only role, where users can view most of the data and floor plans, but they can't make any modifications.
So they can browse, but not edit.
Exactly. Then you might have a simple edit role where users can make basic changes within their specific areas of responsibility.
Okay, so maybe they can update the status of a work order they're assigned to?
Yeah, something like that.
Plus.
And then finally, you've got the full edit role, which obviously gives comprehensive rights to modify data and system settings. But even then, it's usually restricted to a defined scope.
Right, so a full editor for the facilities department might not have access to, like, financial data or HR information.
Exactly. So it's a tiered approach to access control, which makes a lot of sense for managing different levels of responsibility.
Now, what about some more specific job-related roles that you might see in a CAFM system?
So we see examples in our materials like a space manager.
And what would their typical focus be?
Their primary focus is all about space, how it's categorized, its current status, managing building and floor lists, working with those floor plans, understanding occupancy, things like that.
So they're really the ones who are making sure that space is being used effectively.
Exactly. And they would probably have permission to upload drawings and update space-related data.
Okay. And then there's the work manager.
Yeah. The work manager is focused on work orders and property administration. So they would be reviewing, approving, managing service requests, stuff like that.
So if a light bulb goes out, it's their job to make sure someone gets it fixed.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you've got the all-important administrator role.
Oh, yeah, the admins. They have broad system-wide access, and they're responsible for managing users, defining roles and security settings, configuring system preferences, overseeing data management tasks, all that good stuff.
So they're the ones who keep the whole system running smoothly.
Exactly. And then you might also have management viewer roles.
Okay, and what are those for?
So those would be for people who need to have high-level oversight, but don't necessarily need to be able to modify data.
So they might get access to dashboards and key reports, but not be able to make changes.
Exactly. Read-only access for management.
All right, so it sounds like a very structured and well-defined approach to managing access. Now, what kind of control do administrators have over these roles and the permissions associated with them?
Oh, they usually have very granular control.
Really?
Yeah. They can not only define those broad roles we were talking about, but they can also apply more specific restrictions. So, for example, they might implement regional restrictions.
Yeah, what'd that do?
Well, that means that a user in one geographic location can only see data related to buildings in that region.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you could have local restrictions as well.
So that would limit access to specific buildings or even individual floors within a building.
Oh, exactly. And the security settings can be really detailed as well. Well, they can control access to specific fields within forms, individual data columns in reports, even which reports a user can view.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And the whole idea is to apply what's called the least privilege model.
Okay, and what does that mean?
It means that users are only granted the absolute minimum level of access they need to perform their assigned duties.
So no more, no less.
Exactly. And that not only enhances security, but it also actually streamlines the user experience.
How so?
Because users aren't overwhelmed with information and functionality that's not relevant to them.
Right, it's all about showing them just what they need to see.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone from basic building information to reports, to floor plans, to CAD integration, to user roles and security.
We have. It's been a journey.
It has. So as we wrap things up, what are the key takeaways here? I mean, what should NVIDIA or any organization that's looking at implementing a CAFM system really understand about these systems?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that a CFM system can be a really powerful and centralized solution for managing all the complexities of a company's facilities.
Right. It's about bringing all that information together and then giving you the tools to analyze it and make informed decisions.
Exactly. So you've got a structured way to organize and access all that crucial building information, generate those insightful reports for different needs, and seamlessly integrate those visual floor plans with the underlying data through that CAD integration.
And those customizable printed floor plans with the data overlays, those are really valuable for communication and collaboration.
Absolutely. They're a great way to visualize the data and share insights with people who might not be as familiar with the CAFM system itself.
And then underpinning all of that is that critical framework of user roles and security measures that ensures data integrity and that people only have access to what they need.
Right. That's essential for any system that's managing sensitive data.
And if we think specifically about NVIDIA and their stated needs, they're looking for real-time data at their fingertips. comprehensive reports to inform their decisions, seamless integration with their existing technology, and a system that can scale as they continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like a well-chosen and well-implemented CAFM system with all the features and the user roles that we've talked about can really address those needs.
Oh, absolutely. It can provide that strong foundation for managing their expanding facilities.
Yeah. I mean, a centralized platform like that can give them the real-time visibility they need to make those quick, informed decisions.
Exactly. And the flexibility in the reporting, that allows them to analyze their space utilization and really identify opportunities for optimization.
And the seamless integration with CAD, that reduces manual effort and makes sure the data is accurate.
Right. And then you've got the ability to really finely control user access, which is essential for data security, especially as an organization grows.
So it's not just about storing data.
No, it's not.
It's about unlocking insights and using those insights to drive efficiency and make strategic decisions.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your space.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that a well-managed CAFM system can really transform how an organization understands and interacts with its physical space.
Absolutely.
It's not just a database.
It's a strategic tool.
Exactly. And it's something that any organization that manages a significant amount of physical assets should definitely be thinking about.
For sure.
All right, well, thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been a fascinating exploration. I hope you found it as insightful as I have.
Me too. It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep diving deep.